welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 242 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 16 of A Feast for Crows, that's Jaime 2.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Again, unless you have the spoiler tier in our Buy Me a Coffee sustainership, then we will spoil things for you. But hopefully, regardless, we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography in this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. I have my labs, where they draw the blood and all that.
Yeah, draw blood, yeah.
Coming up on Thursday. Today's Tuesday. Well, you know that, but nobody else
So you're being good, right?
Yes, I've been cramming for this exam.
You cut out the booze. And...
Yeah, I cut that out a good long while ago. I've been cramming for this test for about the past 2 weeks, and I'm tired of eating so many salads. No, I enjoy a good salad. I eat salads pretty regularly, but yesterday I had 2 salads. Today, I cut it back to 1 salad, trying to really keep an eye on the old cholesterol is the key there.
Really trying to twist the results of the test is what you're trying to do. That's
right. I want to show that I can do it. I feel like every year, things tend to just get a little bit worse than they were before. Like my waistline is just slightly larger than it was the previous year. My height is just slightly shorter than it was the previous year. And my cholesterol is slightly higher than it was the previous year. So I don't know if I can do anything about the height, but I gotta try and reverse the other two, or at least maintain them.
Well, I broke down on the cholesterol, and they basically I now take a thing.
Right.
And it's fixed me right up. I eat what the heck I want now.
Well, maybe that's the option I should be shooting for.
Exactly.
Get to the point where they prescribe me something, and then I can eat whatever I want.
No more of this salad malarkey. It's burgers and fries the rest of your life. Your short life.
Right. You want steak with butter? Have at it.
I do say when I eat a salad after taking my pill, I'm like, I'm really not working that thing.
Right, yeah. You got to let it stretch its arms a little bit, flex its muscles.
Exactly.
The other thing I wanted to share with you is that I told you Molly had her last day of school last week, but she had this one final project that had to be turned in. Nowadays they turn everything in online. Back in our day, we had to physically hand over something to a teacher, but so she didn't have to be present for this, and so it was for her history class, and it was an oral history, and she interviewed me, and it was 13 questions about various historical things and my experience with them and all this and that, and it took about 20-some minutes, 23 minutes or so, and as we wrapped up, and she hit stop on the recorder on her phone, she was like, "Wow, Dad, you were really good at that." And I was like, "Well, you do know I co-host a podcast, right? Talking into a microphone is not that unusual to me."
I mean, she's participated in the podcast that you co-host. You'd think she'd remember.
Yeah.
You're a natural, Dad.
Goodness.
In front of that microphone.
It's like you've done this before. 240.
That's high praise coming from her.
2 episodes, are we?
Exactly.
4.5 years. I got a little bit of practice at it.
Yeah.
So what's up? How are you doing?
I'm all right. I've been to see 2 rock concerts since last I saw you.
Oh, wow. Hasn't been that long, has it? I think it's been
less
than a week.
It's been a week. Friday and Saturday I was at rock concerts, that's a lot for me.
Yeah. Wow.
I remember when I woke up just before 6 a.m. on Friday, I thought, oh, it's going to be a long day. Because I was seeing 3 bands that night, and the first one was on stage at 9 p.m. I was like, oh. I was flagging by the end.
I bet. By 9 p.m., I'm looking at my watch thinking, boy, I'd really like to be in my pajamas watching a show.
I know it.
But they were good?
Yeah. It's the first band is a sort of like a metal band that we kind of know, and they were they said hi to us before they went on.
Oh,
it was
cool.
kind of exciting.
Yeah.
People were looking at us like, those dweebs are really cool. You know?
They're way cooler than we thought based on appearances.
The appearance, yeah. And then the second one was another band that we know, and so that was nice too. And that was actually a benefit for breast cancer. So we did our little bit for that one. And it was all very
for
good.
a good cause.
Yeah, we had a good time. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Carson finished her work for the year because she's an educator that's coming to the end of the school year.
Right.
And her boss gave out awards to everyone, and she came back with a certificate that said that she was the limbo leader. And I was like, did you play games or something?
Right.
She said, no, this was, they have like a bathroom at the place where she teaches, and a kid had gone into the stall, locked the door and crawled out. And Carson had to crawl under the door of the bathroom.
Did she do it limbo style? That would be impressive.
That would have been cool. I think she did not. But Carson said, it was a squeeze. She said, I was really pressed down into that bathroom floor to get under there. I was like,
That's one place you don't want to be pressed down against, is a bathroom floor, especially at an elementary school.
Yeah. Well, this is a public park, so maybe even worse.
Yes, that might be worse.
But it was nice of her. Her manager is good, actually. I kind of, because I manage people, I listen into what her manager does because she's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And she remembered that story and gave Carson an award for it, and Carson felt good that it was remembered that she went that extra.
Yeah, right.
I'd say mile, but like 10 inches kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's good on you that you pay attention to leaders that you respect. And
well, I mean, no. It's the Genghis Khan model of leadership. Genghis Khan conquered the world because he was acquisitive with the things he learned as he conquered the world and would apply them.
Right. Yeah.
Good
idea.
The Mongols took over the whole world, but they left very little trace of themselves because they acquired things as they went. So when they invaded the next place, it was with the technology of the place they'd just taken. So the Mongols themselves didn't leave much trace.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, that's really neat. I like it.
The other story I have this week was this is a strange one. Lucas was very keen I put this in the podcast, but it was very strange because he came up to me the other day. He said, "Hey, Dad, do you know who Basquiat is?" And it's an artist. You may not be aware of him. He was sort of like a
yes. My puzzled look probably said it to you, but not to our listeners.
Yes, no, I think they probably guessed where you were going with that. And I was like, yeah, kind of, I vaguely know him, sort of thing. And that was it. He showed me some of his art. I said, yeah, that's what I thought it was, kind of colourful, sort of like alternative art sort of thing. And I don't know why he was asking me. And communicating with Lucas is always a strange thing. So I didn't worry too much about it. He wandered off and left me puzzled why we'd had this conversation. Right. But on the family call, he pipes in with a story. Lucas doesn't always come to the family call because it's at 10 a.m. on a weekend. So
right.
He's usually fast asleep. Yes. But he came and he said, so I'll tell you what's happened this week. My dad was just going on and on about how he loves Basquiat and how he's like, and you people are too ignorant to know who that is. I'm like, he said, they were telling him, he was saying what he was doing at college, and he's doing a class on ethics. I said, does that include a thing about lying?
Right. Totally fictionalized that story.
I know, I was like, that's not a single part of that is true. But he was delighted.
But he is your son, and you've never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
That is true. That is absolutely true. When he suggested this, I had that very conversation with him. I said, I can't tell that story because none of it was true. He said, Dad, I've heard your stories.
I remember Joan used to say that she would hear your first iteration of a story in the morning on your walk to get coffee, and then the second one later in the day, and the third one by lunchtime. And they would keep modifying to get better and better. Look.
The diamond was always in there. You just had to smooth out the edges. Right. That's all.
I get it. I totally get it.
But the funny thing was, my family all think Lucas is a bit of a sort of like a dour curmudgeon because he never smiles, and he's on the call, and he's grumpy because of the time of day.
Right.
If he has got up, it's very recently. But he was so happy and animated telling this story. It was all smiles. I was like,
that's all he needs. He needs a muse, and you're his muse.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave Jaime Lannister? Last we saw of Jaime was actually in a Cersei chapter where he was keeping Tommen safe at the royal wedding. Despite Cersei's helicopter kingsguarding, he was also being shunned by his sister at the burning of the Tower of the Hand. She wanted Osmond Kettleblack to escort her to her rooms. Jaime's green hue was probably just a reflection of the wildfire, probably. Last we were in his head, he was helping Cersei to strategize a way to rid herself of the annoying Tyrells. Mackelly, why don't we give a summary of this one?
Okay, well, Jaime rides along with a procession of knights and lords escorting his father's bones as it makes its way out of King's Landing to its destination at Casterly Rock. He trots up alongside his uncle Kevan, who frostily questions if he's here on the Queen's business. Jaime is not. Kevan asks about the King's well-being in a reproachful tone. He's well. Balon Swan has the watch.
After another salvo about the decline of the Kingsguard from his uncle, Jaime changes the subject. He begs his uncle to make peace with Cersei. Kevan did not know that they were at war. If so, it was not his doing. She wants to rule? Fine, she can rule. Just leave him alone. He's headed to Darry to help Lancel. Besides, Cersei has left little else for him to do.
The mention of Lancel reminds Jaime of Tyrion's assertion that Cersei was having sex with Lancel, Osmond Kettleblack, and Moonboy. Jaime discounts the idea as Tyrion's attempt to wound him. Well, he tries to discount it. Jaime suggests Kevan keep his knights around him while in the Riverlands. Kevan takes it as a threat, but a stunned Jaime clarifies that he only meant for his safety from the Hound and his band of broken men.
Cersei wants Kevan to return with the Hound's head. Jaime says that plenty of other men can handle that job, but none of them would make as good a Hand of the King. Kevan says to tell Cersei his terms have not changed the next time Jaime is in her bedchamber.
Whoa.
The older man rides away, but the barb confirms Cersei's belief that Kevan knows about their relationship. Despite being a Lannister of the Rock, Jaime cannot convince himself that Cersei would not harm their inconvenient uncle.
Jaime falls back to ride alongside Lancel, who is flanked by Septons. Jaime's body comment that Lancel's more experienced wife will surely show Lancel what goes where during the bedding is poorly received by his cousin and his Septons. Lancel asserts that he knows how to do his duty and rides on past Jaime. Looking at the sorry state of his cousin, he again thinks Tyrion lied about Lancel and Cersei.
Jaime rides through the comparatively empty streets of King's Landing, now that the Tyrell host has left the city. Half escorted Garland, his mother and grandmother, back to the Reach. The other half rode with Lord Mace to engage Storm's End in a siege. Only the 2,000-strong Lannister host remained, waiting for the Red Wine fleet to carry them to the lightly garrisoned Dragonstone.
Inside the Red Keep, Jaime watches knights riding at a quintain, an endeavor Jaime would never take part in again. The men have varying levels of success, but when Sir Loras mounts up, he puts the rest to shame. Jaime finds Cersei entertaining Lady Tyanna Merryweather, and accompanied by Little King Tommen and Grand Maester Pycelle.
The Queen is in her cups, an ironic new trend for the woman who so often scolded Robert for such a thing. Grand Maester Pycelle had told them that Lolis Stokeworth had birthed a boy, and her husband, Bronn, had named the child Tyrion. Tommen wants to send a kitten as a gift, but Cersei has other plans. Jaime figures that it will be a new stepfather. The look in Cersei's eyes was the same as he'd seen when she burned the Tower of the Hand. That night, there'd been tears in those eyes, but whether from joy or sorrow, he couldn't say.
Her reaction to the wildfire destroying the Tower of the Hand had reminded him of the Mad King. He recalled how burning a man with wildfire roused the king, and usually ended with the king taking his queen by force. Jaime asked for a private word with his sister, but Tyanna promised to return for supper. Alone, Jaime points out the unusual new company that his sister is keeping. Cersei explains that Tyanna is a spy for Margaery, and Cersei uses her to feed Margaery what Cersei wants Margaery to know. Tyenna also spills all of Margaery's secrets to Cersei. One such secret involves Olenna Tyrell's use of old coins to cheat tradesmen.
Jaime asks Cersei to find a use for their uncle Kevan, possibly in the north against Stannis. Cersei says that's Roose Bolton's job, and he'll soon be past the neck when Bolton's bastard son removes the Ironborn from Moat Cailin. Well, she still requires a hand. If not Kevan, then who? Cersei feels only weak leaders need a strong hand. She'll merely need a servant to carry out her orders. Possibly Helene the pyromancer will serve?
Jaime feels Cersei thinks that she's Tywin with breasts, but she couldn't be more wrong. Tywin was implacable and relentless. Cersei lacks judgment and patience. But they discuss the new master of ships, the young Orain Waters. Cersei claims she wants more youth on the small council. Jaime thinks she wants Orain around for his good looks, again thinking of Tyrion's parting words. He thinks Waters is a terrible pick, but Helene is worse. And then there's Qyburn. The man rode with the brave companions, and now he sits on the king's small council.
Jaime thinks they're all doomed if Cersei continues this way. He implores her to stop making foes of friends. Uncle Kevan is not her enemy. Jaime isn't her enemy. Cersei asked Jaime for help, and he rejected her. When she tosses her wine cup at his head, Jaime knows it's time to go.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Later in the White Sword Tower, Jaime flips through the White Book when Sir Loras enters. Jaime tells him that he rode well earlier. Loras says, it was better than well. Loras spots the book and says books are for maesters. Jaime explains that this book contains information about every man who's ever served in the Kingsguard. Loras knows the most famous brothers, but hasn't heard of the others. Jaime tells Loras he'd do well to learn of those who came before him. He points out Sir Criston Cole. They called him the Kingmaker.
I've got to say, the end of that, the Loras and Jaime scene, that Loras reminds me of Jamie Tart from the...
yeah.
What's it called? Ted
Lasso. Right.
Yeah, just
I see that
just
comparison.
Contemptuous of his elders and betters.
Yes.
And, unwilling to learn and listen.
Early seasons, Jamie Tart. Although I don't know if you've ever finished. Did you finish Ted Lasso?
I did finish it.
Okay. So yes, early season Jamie Tart. But yes, I could definitely see it.
Mm-hmm.
So just right off the bat, Jaime spends about a paragraph thinking about this Lord Jast and how he looks basically like there was rumor that he had died, and Jaime says he basically looks like he actually has died, but that he is alive and kicking and he's in this procession. So just real quick, because the amount of ink spent on describing him in this chapter is about how much ink has been spent on him, probably more, in all the previous references. So he is the head of House Jast, and he is married to Lyanna Lannister, which is, it's complicated, but basically a cousin of Jaime.
Okay.
He was captured at the Battle of Oxcross, which is when Robb's army surprised Stafford Lannister's Western army and routed them. And at the time, in a Clash of Kings, he was thought dead. But in the Storm of Swords appendix, it said he was actually a captive at Pink Maiden. So that's where he'd been this whole time, and now he's out, and worse for the wear, I guess.
They must be a fairly minor house, because I mean I can barely remember them coming up. You know, I mean,
yeah.
most minor houses of the major areas you've heard of them at least, but House Jast is barely registered for me.
Right. Yeah.
And he married a Lannister. You know, that's a coup right there.
Yeah, and he's got 2 kids with her, so he's got Lannister blood children. So yeah, that's what made me look him up, because he spent a paragraph talking about him, and I was like, who is this guy?
Kevan is pretty annoyed with Cersei and Jaime, and it's a little bit unfair on Jaime because he's getting the flack for Cersei's wrongdoing. Really. Although, I mean, I guess Kevan is annoyed about the whole thing, and Jaime's at least 50% of that.
Yeah, I think he also misunderstands the current state of their relationship. Jaime and Cersei.
Well, true, yes. It's hard to say, oh, no, you don't understand. I'm not sleeping with my sister anymore. We're having a fight.
Right. We couldn't be on more opposite sides than we are right now of everything.
Oh, well, in that case, it doesn't matter that you've got 3 children by her and one of them falsely sits the Iron Throne. Everything's good. Just stay frosty with her.
Speaking of that child, he seems to insinuate out loud that it's a farce that Tommen is the king. He asks, how is the king, in a rather reproachful manner, almost like, I know that he is not Robert's son, and I thought that was...
Well, that's interesting, because I interpreted that particular section slightly differently. I didn't think... Obviously, Kevan does think what you're suggesting he thinks, but I thought his reproach was more at the state of the Kingsguard. The Kingsguard has fallen from its once lofty state to the point where they lose kings left and right. Now, here's Jaime, who should be looking after the king, not doing it.
Yes, that could be too. Yeah.
Because he had a tone of reproach, but it doesn't say, and that reproach was because,
Right. Yes. Yeah, that could be it too. But yes, you're right. You're right on both accounts. He definitely does insinuate that Jaime and Cersei are having an incestual relationship, and therefore the children are likely Jaime's. But you're right. He does just right after that comment on the state of the Kingsguard being so low.
Because, and I will say, Kevan might say barbed comments like next time you're in her bedchamber and things like that, but he might draw the line at saying that his nephew is not the rightful king in any kind of place that is not very, very private.
Yes, and that's why the way I interpreted it, I thought, wow, he shouldn't be saying that out loud. That seems like a really bad idea. But
no, it's the Kingsguard who aren't worthy, not my incestuous born nephew. No, wait, not incestuous.
Wait, did I say that? But since Tywin's death, basically since they started squabbling in Tywin's bedchamber, he's had an increasing amount of animosity toward them. It feels
no question,
and
no question,
and it made me wonder if maybe he's always felt that they're irreverent and disrespectful, but he's held his tongue on it for Tywin's sake.
Right. Yeah, I'd not thought of that. I thought this was all triggered by their behavior in the immediate aftermath of Tywin's death. But you're right. Maybe that just uncorked the bottle. Right. All along, Kevan was like, those 2 idiots are ruining this family. And
Yes.
The moment Tywin died, he was like, I am going to let them know it.
Right. It's starting to feel like maybe now. Of course, he's also upset at Cersei for leaving him no role at all to play in the management of the West or the Lannister family. But it certainly feels like he has personal issue with them and their behavior. And he says, in this discussion, he says something about how those 2 are always good with the japes, and just leave him out of it, out of everything, basically.
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to ask you, this is a Jaime chapter, so we get Jaime's perspective, but Jaime absolutely denies that when he told Kevan to keep knights around him while he was in the Riverlands, that it was a veiled threat. When Kevan reacts like it's a veiled threat, Jaime's like, no, that's not what I meant. I meant look after yourself. You're my uncle. But do you believe Jaime?
I do believe Jaime. I do think it's because the description says he was stunned when his uncle took it that way.
Right.
So
exactly. It's his POV, so that should be the truth of it.
Right. Yes, that's why I took it that way, yes. Okay.
Because just something about the way he said it, something about the terms he used would have triggered that for me with Kevan. And maybe on some levels he meant it not from him. It wasn't a threat from Jaime, but it was like him warning him about what his sister might do.
Yes, because right after that he's thinking, oh boy, Kevan definitely knows about our relationship, and I cannot say that Cersei won't do something about that and harm him. So, yes.
And so the stunned is not necessarily because Kevan picked up on the unintentional veiled threat, but that Kevan interpreted the unintentional veiled threat to be from Jaime.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait, no, not me.
Not me. The other twin.
But sorry, the Hound is the
the Hound is what we're going with here. But one final thing about Kevan before we move on is that I get it. He's definitely feeling underappreciated. He was offered Hand of the King, turned it down, said, I want to be King Regent, or Castellan at Casterly Rock. He got not only neither of those, he got nothing. He's clearly being punished for rejecting the Hand of the King role. But to me, it feels like he has tried to pick up where Tywin left off as the patriarch of the family and dictate terms to Cersei. He just doesn't carry the clout to do so.
Yes, Cersei does not kowtow to him in any way. But right. I actually think he's saying the kinds of things that Tywin would have said.
Yes.
But you're absolutely right. It's just not. It just doesn't have the authority that it had with Tywin.
Yes.
And actually that comes all the way back to the questions of power that we've had all the way through the books, all the way back to Game of Thrones. Yeah. It's like he has the same amount of power. It just happens to not be your father. And you treat the words completely differently, 180 degrees different.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure we know that Kevan and Tywin were very close. And I'm sure he heard Tywin verbalize certain things that he is trying to carry out because he knows that's what Tywin would have wanted. But right. he can't affect the change that he needs to affect because no one's listening to him because he's not Tywin Lannister.
Yeah.
But Cersei, so Jaime says to Kevan that Cersei wishes she could be here to see her father off, but her duties prevent it. And then later we see that she's drinking and laughing with Tyanna Merryweather and Tommen and Grand Maester Pycelle. And, she didn't bother to see her own father's bones out of the city as Queen Regent, just to goof around, just because she didn't feel like it. She was in her cups.
Possibly didn't want to see Kevan.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't feel like Jaime was sent as an emissary of Cersei. He went to try and build the bridge.
Yes.
That she didn't care about.
Yes. Agree.
As you mentioned several times in the recap, Tyrion's words keep reverberating in Jaime's head about Cersei's infidelities. Well, infidelities is sort of like in quotes here because he too is one of her infidelities, but
right.
He thinks that they're infidelities because he thinks she should save herself only for him. But funny thing is in this chapter he completely rejects it. Every time he thinks of it, he says, "No, that's not true. It couldn't possibly happen." But he keeps thinking it, and that rather undermines the self-belief that this never happened.
Yes, and clearly he finds it. It being her sleeping with others, a major violation of the trust of their relationship.
Right. Yeah, it's not nothing to him.
Right.
I mean, he knows that she slept with Robert, but unwillingly and unhappily.
And rarely,
and rarely.
She was usually able to prevent it, but yes.
Exactly. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. He is not content to learn that she might have slept with other people.
Yeah.
I also think it's slightly funny that he rejects Lancel as a possible lover because of how feeble he is. But Lancel's feebleness comes from the wounds he took in the battle on the Blackwater. Before that, he was a hot young Lannister who looked a lot like Jaime.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and he also
almost exactly who she would go for.
He also mentions his piety, but prior to the Battle of the Blackwater, he didn't have such piety. So
I would say sleeping with your first cousin out of wedlock is pretty impious.
Yeah, yes, I agree. I would agree with that for sure. But about Lancel, he's constantly being described as accompanied by Septons. Here he's flanked by Septons. In the previous Cersei chapter, which was Tommen's wedding where she burned the Tower of the Hand, when she's surveying the room, she notices Lancel talking to a septon, and basically every time Lancel is described, he's talking to a septon, and I think it was after Tywin's funeral, when she was talking to everybody, Lancel said to Cersei that a septon came to him at his deathbed and said, the gods saved you for a reason. And it's clearly showing that this man is building quite the faith, quite the connection and relationship with it.
Yes. Brushes with death will often create these Damascenes conversions.
True,
so, yes,
true.
he's found God, all 7 of them.
All 7, right.
He's getting very close to one of them, brought him into the fold of all 7. But they've succeeded. The Lannisters, despite the Lannister twins, despite the sort of disarray that they're in, have actually managed to achieve what they wanted to, which was to get the Tyrells out of King's Landing.
Yeah.
Marjorie has been left with essentially no protectors. I mean, the closest thing she has to a protector is Loras on the Kingsguard.
Right. And probably a few household knights, but,
Right.
Nothing, no major force, which is a lot of trust in the Lannisters to leave her in the lion's den with an outnumbered force to protect her.
Yeah, it's the Ned Stark move.
Yes,
Let's send our troops away and see what happens.
Which is a little bit surprising that Olenna didn't insist on a bigger presence being kept in King's Landing, at least for the first few months to a year or so.
It's tricky though, isn't it? Because it's, what do you hope to achieve? I mean, if the force you leave is less than the Lannisters, then they will lose to a battle with the Lannisters.
Yes, that
is
true.
Leave her a few bodyguards for sort of assassination attempts, and beyond that, what can you do, really? You've got to trust them to a certain extent.
Yeah, you make a good point. And speaking of the Lannister force, it's mentioned in the chapter that a force of 2,000 strong Lannisters are outside the walls of King's Landing waiting for the Red Wine fleet to take them to siege Dragonstone, which we know is very much being lightly garrisoned. But it also, in that same description, says that basically the average Westerman has returned to the west for a last harvest, which I was kind of glad to hear, quite honestly.
Yeah. I think you and I are natural Minister of Farms, Minister of Agriculture. Because throughout this book, all this fighting's going on. We're like, will someone think of the harvest?
Right. And
I think we're Starks. That's what it is. We're just like, winter is coming.
Yeah, right. It really is. And as quickly as autumn seems to be moving, remember last chapter, Brienne was talking about how when she was coming down to King's Landing, all the trees were green. Now on the way back, they're all leaf bare. Yeah. And so I hope there's still time. They better get a move on one final harvest. That's all I'm saying here. So
Jaime wistfully watches the knights practicing at the Quintain, and he knows it'll never work again for him because you it's one of those sports where you have to fight right-handed.
Right.
Yes, there's nothing you can do about that. I suppose you could, given that you don't actually need a lot of sort of like directionality of the lance, you could sort of tie it to your stump.
Maybe you could use your the lower part of your forearm.
But you know what? That thing would come back against you with such force.
Yeah, that's true. That would
probably tear the rest of your arm off.
Yes. Yeah. Probably not a good. He should just not do it, I think. I think he's right.
And he sees Loras, and Loras is renowned for his swordsmanship, but Jaime notices that it's really his horsemanship that sets him apart.
Right.
He is exceptional on the horse and very, very good with the lance, so he's pretty jealous of him.
It takes a trained eye probably to pick up on the fact that it's the horsemanship, not he puts the lance wherever he wants it. That's one thing Jaime notices, but he says he's always thought it was about horsemanship, the jousting, then lance placement. And
you know what? I'm not an expert. I've never ridden a horse or jousted, but I'm gonna bet that Jaime's got a point there.
I think so, yeah.
Because if I was jousting, I would drop the lance and hold on for dear life, screaming all the way up there. And that's because of my lack of horsemanship.
It is. It definitely is. Yeah.
It's not my jousting. Who knows how good of a jouster I would be?
You'd have to hold on to that lance and shield to find out.
To find out, exactly, yeah.
Jaime recalls that Loras unhorsed him, and he thinks maybe it wasn't a fluke. He probably, Jaime's a very proud man, especially before he lost his hand. He probably just figured, that was a fluke. But now, sitting back and observing Loras, he realizes, oh, wow, yeah, he's actually really good. And so just as a reminder, it was at Joffrey's name day tourney in 298, so kind of before this story really got rolling. It was the joust match that the Valyrian steel dagger story originated from. Littlefinger told Cat that he lost the dagger to Tyrion when Tyrion bet on Loras and Littlefinger bet on Jaime. And when Tyrion was confronted, he said, I would never bet against my brother.
Against my brother, yeah.
And when Jaime was confronted in the dungeons of Riverrun by Cat, he said the same thing. My brother would never bet against me. And I know that the dagger did change hands that day because Robert was showing it around at the feast afterward. So it was, it was that particular joust that Jaime is thinking about right there that that Littlefinger got the whole idea for the deception with the dagger.
Did Jaime not take part in Ned's Hand of the King tournament?
I believe he did. I want to say he lost possibly to Sandor, but I'm not positive. It's so long ago.
But Loras was in that too, right? But yes. That wasn't when they clashed lances.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
We have a baby name. That's right. So Lawless Stokeworth, her boy, was delivered, apparently healthy and happy, and with the name Tyrion. Let's see. Tyrion
of the Blackwater?
Waters? He's a bastard of the Crown Lands. No. Yeah.
Oh, I see. But does Bronn have a last name? I thought Bronn was like Sir Bronn of the Blackwater.
Yeah, but he's not his son, so...
Yeah, but if they're married now, wouldn't he... I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't looked that up. But the baby's name is Tyrion.
Which respects Cersei's wishes. She did not want the baby to be called Tywin. She probably should have stipulated she really didn't want it to be called Tyrion. But actually... I'm very touched, actually, because I wasn't sure that Bronn still cared for Tyrion. They've grown apart a little bit, but it's kind of like it's both a thumb of the nose to Cersei, but also, a genuine mark of friendship and respect back to Tyrion. His old
I think their friendship started to grow apart when Bronn declined the offer to defend him against the Mountain.
Right.
That's when things were. And I will say, as much as Jaime thinks that Cersei's going to get the baby as a gift, a new stepfather, that it was Cersei that originally orchestrated this marriage to remove Bronn from Tyrion's service, specifically so that he couldn't defend him in the trial by combat.
Whenever I think of Bronn and Cersei, I can't help but remember that the two actors involved had dated before Game of Thrones and didn't like each other. And so I don't think there was a single scene in the show with the two of them in it because they did not like each other one little bit.
Yeah. I will say that it's a bit dangerous for Bronn to poke the lioness like so.
True. I mean, that's just a sort of general truism of life.
Yes.
And not poke lions.
Yes. Especially ones that are also Queen Regent and are starting to give off Aerys, Mad King Aerys vibes.
True that. And again, one more time, Lannisters always pay their debts means Lannisters always get revenge. They don't actually pay debts, they just get revenge.
They do indeed.
That's what their word should be.
And this was one of the spoilers from the previous Jaime chapter about what Lollis would name her son. So, yeah, there you go.
I heard that and I was still excited when I read it.
Because you'd forgotten.
God, you know it. So Cersei, as was mentioned, was moved to tears while burning the Tower of the Hand. Like Aerys was moved when he was burning someone. He was moved in a different way.
Yes.
He was moved. His sex drive was somewhat gone with his madness, but it came back when he set someone on fire, which is gruesome and horrible. And his wife was not particularly interested in his advances, but his advances were not to be stopped just by her not wanting it. And the Kingsguard, Jaime and John Darry in particular, had to listen to her being raped inside and chose to do nothing.
Yeah, that's terrible. It's, I said previously, I think it was during the Eris Oakhart chapter, that, the previous iteration of the Kingsguard was full of honorable, distinguished knights, but not without blemish to said honor. Mm-hmm. This is the instance that I was referring to in that episode. Allowing Aerys to brutally rape Rhaella and standing guard over it. I fully appreciate the tough position that they were in.
Yes. And this is a Jaime chapter, so this is Jaime's point of view, but he said, we are the Kingsguard, we're supposed to protect her. And it was John Darry who said, yes, but not from him.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that might be self-serving, but Jaime at least comes across as someone who cared.
Yeah, and he was thinking about how her screams were more tough for him to listen to than one of the Hand of the Kings. I can't remember which one it was, Carlstead maybe, that was being burned alive, basically. That his screams were less painful to hear than hers.
Yeah.
And, I wondered if this savage rape that happened in this, that he's remembering in this chapter, if that's the instance where Rhaella became pregnant with Dany.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because the chapter mentions her leaving for Dragonstone. Right?
Yes, that's the next time he saw her. Yeah.
So that's a little horror for Dany's backstory as well.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about it until this chapter, reading that, and then him saying, next time I saw her, the maids were talking about how badly, injured she was, and she was getting on the ship to take her to Dragonstone. So the time frame kind of lines up, I guess.
Yeah. And Jaime's beginning to see signs of Aerys in Cersei. Her love of wildfire, her throwing away her friends, surrounding herself with lackeys and lackwits.
Right.
That's a bad comparison.
Yeah, not who you want to be compared to.
No. Cersei's not there yet, but she's certainly making some odd decisions, that's for sure.
It's definitely a problem, and it seems that the Joffrey apple didn't fall far from the Cersei tree, maybe.
True.
Because she's becoming about as unhinged as he was as king. And, not only... Jaime thinks about her not only taking on bad characteristics of the Mad King, but she's also picking up bad habits of Robert's as well, which is every time he sees her, she's in her cups, basically, which is, ironic because that's what she used to get so angry at Robert for.
Yeah, I don't particularly wish Cersei well, but it feels like if she would listen to Jaime's trying to talk her into sense, stop alienating your allies.
Yeah.
Just think about how we're going to rule this land. She's still jockeying and positioning, even though she's top dog now. She doesn't need to.
Yes.
She's still fighting for the throne that she's sitting on.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, another similarity with Aerys is that she's keeping odd company for a ruler. Aerys surrounded himself with some odd ducks, like making the pyromancer Rosart Hand of the King. And Jaime specifically says, what are you doing with these Kettleblacks and Qyburn and Taena? All unvetted, all who've managed to find ways to be helpful to her, and now she's elevated them with no effort to vet or consideration of their qualifications.
Right. And Helene the Pyromancer at least is vetted in the sense that he's proven himself loyal over the years.
Right.
But he's a Pyromancer, and that's exactly who Aerys elevated.
Yes.
It's not the kind of company you want.
Yeah, and then Jaime balks at the idea of Aurane Waters being considered for Master of Ships. He's 22, I think, or something like that.
But he's good looking.
Yes, he's young, untested, malleable, but as you said, Jaime thinks that he was chosen because he's quite fetching.
Jaime will probably be like, all right, you can keep Qyburn, you can keep Helene, you can keep Pycelle, but that guy's got to go.
He's got to go, right. Yeah, and he was chosen over Paxter Redwine, who commands a huge fleet.
Right. Who's the natural choice for Master of Ships, but he's a Tyrell loyalist. So
yes. And, clearly she's either never heard of or totally doesn't buy into the concept of keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah.
Because she is keeping her enemies as far away as possible and only surrounding herself with her friends, in quotes.
Friends. Yes. Yes. Let's have air quotes around those freaks and geeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Jaime says that Cersei thinks that she's Tywin with breasts, but Tywin was relentless and patient, and Cersei's all wildfire, especially when thwarted. And I think that's a very nice poetic description of the difference between the two.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, she thinks that strong leaders need only diligent servants, not especially strong hands of the king. Unfortunately for her, she doesn't fit that bill of a strong leader so far. She's made a complete mess of things.
That's a chicken and egg thing, though, right?
Yes.
Because if she were a strong leader, she wouldn't feel the need to do these things.
Yes, you're absolutely right. She's not. It's becoming more and more clear, and we've talked about this since a Game of Thrones, that she's not nearly as clever as she thinks she is. But now she holds all the cards, has all the power, and she still thinks she's more clever than she is, and it's starting to really create problems.
Yep. So she's with Tiana Merryweather, and last we saw them, Tiana was ingratiating herself by informing Cersei that Sanel was a spy for Marjorie, explaining that she wanted good things for her family, for the Merryweathers.
Yeah. She also testified against Tyrion with absolutely no evidence, saying that she saw him put something in the chalice that Joff drank from.
As we said, she's certainly someone who's willing to debase herself to get into Cersei's good graces. And this works for Cersei, of course, because that's what she wants from people. But Jaime's very worried about the nature of Tiana Merryweather. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to keep someone who's an admitted, or not an admitted spy, but someone you believe a spy for someone else close, because you can absolutely feed them the information you want. And as long as they're giving you something in return, it's not a bad situation. But it is still a hallmark of her current poor decisions that she has this unvetted friend so close to her, hearing the things she's telling Tom and hearing the most important affairs of state.
Yeah, and I just feel like Olenna seems to be too good at the game to allow this to have happened, which makes me question a bit exactly whether Tiana is giving Cersei the useful information she thinks that she is getting from Tiana. It's possible that Marjorie was so willing and eager to give up Tiana because she too is feeding Cersei what she wants through Tiana,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how there are so many people who've got conflicting interests. I mean, you think about the Kettleblacks. I mean, the Kettleblacks, Cersei thinks they're hers. Tyrion thought they were his. Littlefinger is convinced they're his.
Right, yeah.
They are making mint of playing these people against each other.
So far, but, it's a risky game, but so far.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But here's another idea about Tiana. Maybe, what if she's being paid by a third party to spy on both Cersei and Marjorie? What if there's a third party controlling her? And one thing that made me think of that is she told Cersei about Olenna's chest of old gold coins used to cheat tradesmen. That's one of the examples Cersei gives of the secrets that Tiana told her about. The description of those coins perfectly fit the description of the coin that Qyburn found in the jailer Rugen's chamber. We know that the Tyrells had nothing to do with Tyrion's disappearance. So either that is a major coincidence, or possibly Tiana has either been tasked or been fed this information to further make Cersei think that the Tyrells were involved in the plot.
Tasked as in she planted the coin there?
Or tasked to give that bit of information.
I see.
So either she was tasked with it, like said, tell her this, or she was told this.
On the assumption she would share this information.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Right.
So it makes me question, could there be a third party? Just like how Littlefinger was kind of a third party during the whole Sansa, Sir Dantas situation, it was really Tyrion, Littlefinger behind the scene. Could there be a situation here with Tyenna?
We will read more about Tyenna and keep a very close eye on her and make our decisions.
Absolutely.
Cersei says that Roose Bolton's bastard will remove the Ironborn from Moat Cailin, that they're coming down from the north, and that we've always said that felt like the only way back through the neck would be to come from both directions at the same time.
Right.
And so this could potentially be bad news for Victarion. It's Victarion Greyjoy who's holding Moat Cailin, right? He's been called back to the King's Moot, hasn't he?
Yeah. So first of all, I feel like Cersei must have missed the memo that Tommen signed a letter legitimizing Ramsay as a Bolton, no longer Roose's bastard. But, whatever. News travels, maybe she didn't get to see that particular paper that he signed. But yeah, because Victarion went back for the King's Moot at the Iron Islands, there is a possible opportunity here if if the person he put in charge isn't as strong a leader as Victarion is.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see about that. I wondered, does Ramsay and the Boltons have enough support in the north to attack Moat Cailin from the north? I guess you don't need that many. Maybe just the Bolton army in general would be enough.
The other thing is because it's the Ironborn you're attacking, you can find common cause with people who haven't bought into your leadership yet.
Well, yes, you're right. Yeah.
If it was an attack on Winterfell, you would get less people joining you, but it's an attack on the Ironborn in Moat Cailin.
I totally see what you're saying.
And as we mentioned, Jaime's conversation with Loras doesn't paint the Knight of the Flowers in the most glowing light. He definitely comes off as arrogant and shallow. And I definitely think there's some of this is sort of like looking at the wounded hero. He idolized Jaime probably. Now he's like, that guy. He's broken old, and pathetic.
Washed up, missing a hand.
Exactly. I should be in charge.
Right. Yeah. He certainly comes off as lacking interest in learning or understanding about history, which is not unusual for young people.
I'm 99% sure Jaime was exactly the same at that age.
I had that same thought. He was probably just as arrogant and just as uninterested in hearing about history from older, more experienced people. But it's also not shocking for a highly talented teen who earned his fame at a young age for athletic prowess to not be all that interested in reading and studying and learning and things of that nature. But now he's a member of the King's Guard, so it's kind of time to grow up and be an adult,
Yes. Yeah, especially given that he's Marjorie's last and only protector. He might really want to focus his mind.
Right.
So tell me, Mackelly, you're always telling me that the ends of the chapters are very important. Why does it mention that Criston Cole was the Kingmaker the week before the second season of House of the Dragon starts?
That's right. By the time this episode airs, it will be the week of.
Man, we spent a long time planning the start of this podcast. To
4.5 years just to get to this point.
HBO owe us.
Right. Whew. Paid off. Just perfectly timed it. So that's the question, right? I do always say that in most instances, the last sentence of the chapter tends to have a lot of impact. So why does the chapter end with the discussion about Criston Cole, the Kingmaker? Well, I will say, I posed this question on the Buy Me a Coffee channel of our Discord server, and I wanted to see what our wise and knowledgeable sustainers thought, and only Jenny responded to this point. I haven't checked recently, but only Jenny responded before we started recording. And what she was thinking and what I was thinking lined up. So here's what Jenny and I are thinking. We're thinking that it's a comparison between the King Slayer and the King Maker. Both men, because right before he talks about Kristen Cole, he and Loras are having a conversation about only the best and the worst are remembered. And
Right.
Jaime said, there's some people that have a little bit of both, best and worst. And these two, the Kingmaker and the King Slayer, both men could be considered the best and worst of the Kingsguard, depending on your perspective.
Right.
The Kingslayer, Jaime, killed the king, but we know he did so to save a city. So now, even though he did what is considered the worst, as a Kingsguard, killing the king is about the worst you could do. And now he's considered to have crap for honor, and he's got this moniker he can never get rid of, the Kingslayer. The Kingmaker changed Westerosi history by choosing between a king and a queen. Again, I'm not going to go into Kristen Cole's deeds because I don't want to get hate mail.
Any minute now you'll find out.
Yes. But, so I think, and Jenny as well thinks that's what was going on at the end of the chapter here.
Interesting. All right, thanks. Now a brief interlude for spoilers. The higher tiers of our sustainers get to hear our spoilers. Please join if you're interested. All right, do you have some background for us?
Sure, I've put together some background. So many... So first of all, so many of the king's brothers' names were tossed around between Jaime and Sir Loras that I thought I had a just golden vein of opportunities here. Unfortunately, most of them were simply there to add color and depth to the world. In most cases, when I looked up their background, it wasn't beyond what was mentioned in this chapter. But I can tell you a bit about Sir Donald of Duskendale. He served in the Kingsguard during the reigns of at least Kings Darren II and Aerys I. It's unclear if he goes beyond that. Here's what I can tell you. Not a whole lot, but he was a ginger and not a member of the ruling house in Duskendale, House Darkland. He was at the tourney at Ashford Meadow, which features heavily in the first Dunk and Egg book, and he fought in the Trial of Seven on the side of the two princes, Aerion and Darren, against Dunk.
Okay.
That's pretty much all I got for you on Sir Donald of Duskendale. I will remind you all about Owen Merryweather's stint as Hand of the King for Aerys. Owen Merryweather gets a mention because Cersei says, well, maybe I will go with Tyanna's husband, Orton Merryweather, as Hand of the King. His grandfather filled the role, and Jaime says, yeah, he did such a great job. He got exiled and had his land stripped from him. So we talked about Owen Merryweather's stint as Hand of the King for Aerys way back in Tyrion 1 of A Clash of Kings. As a reminder, Jaime calls him Horn o' Plenty Hand, and that's because the house's sigil is a golden horn overflowing with fruits and vegetables. So that's how he refers to Aerys' hands by their sigil name, or sigil description, I should say. Anyway, Owen was actually the first hand after Tywin resigned. And Jaime mentions, as I said, that his lands were stripped and that Owen was exiled, and this was due to his work as a Hand of the King. Aerys took those actions after finding Owen ineffectual in squashing the uprising that ultimately became Robert's Rebellion. Of course, the family exile was how Orton managed to find his Myrish wife Tyanna.
Given how he treated some of his hands of the king, he got off fairly lightly.
He did. I was thinking that same thing, yeah.
All right, excellent background, thank you. How about comparison with the television show? Well, this really didn't happen. Jaime is away from King's Landing by this point in the TV show. Cersei sends Mace Tyrell to Braavos to negotiate better terms with the Iron Bank, to whom the crown is in debt to, leaving the small council consisting of her, Grand Maester Pycelle, and Qyburn. So it's Tyanna Merryweather is dropped. It's just it's Cersei and her ever-shrinking circle.
Yeah, I guess so.
Pedantry, just one little thing. It is a character decision, so it doesn't really count. But Aerys raping his wife is another excuse for breaking your damn vows.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, again, PR, I would say. Gonna burn down the whole place with wildfire. Raped his wife horribly. I stopped him. You're welcome.
I can see how it would have been a struggle because you do that, you're possibly giving up your own life, because you went against the king. But I don't know how anyone sits by and listens to that happen.
You don't have to kill the king to stop it. Yeah,
right.
You could stop it. Now maybe you will get. I mean, it's Aerys. You probably will end up dead.
Yes, exactly.
But John Darry doesn't necessarily kill you for stopping it.
No,
tells you shouldn't have done.
Yes, I think the king's retaliation would be painful death. But still, I don't know how one sits by and allows that to happen. So,
but I'm not saying. I'm not even talking about that. The character decision at the time to not intervene was pretty bad. But the character decision now not to tell the whole world is further evidence of Jaime allowing his own honor to be besmirched for something he did that was in fact entirely the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yep. He does it time and time again.
Yeah. News and notes.
Well, as you mentioned, first of all, House of the Dragon Season 2 premieres this Sunday on June 16th, which also happens to be Father's Day. So I hope everyone has their HBO Max subscriptions set up and ready to roll so that you can tune in right as Season 2 gets rolling.
Mm-hmm. Looking forward to it. We're going to take a week off. There won't be an episode on the week of July 2nd, July 1st for Sustainers. We're going to have a week off. We just both happen to be out of town at the same time, so we can't even piece this one together. I'm not putting Jenny and Rob on the same call. Too much.
On Jenny or Rob?
Oh, yeah, it's on Jenny.
Yeah, I figured that would.
And a reminder that we're closing down our merchandise site at the end of June. That's ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. Get it while you can.
That's right. Before it's gone. And we've got a review, which is it's based on the subject line. Looks like a really nice review here from Duba Dudas and Apple Podcast Australia. Or I should say from Apple Podcast Australia. The subject line is finally caught up, an easiest 5-star review ever.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. After nearly a year, I've finally caught up. I found this podcast this time last year as my parents started watching the show, but couldn't watch because of final school exams coming up. So I only saw bits, the first being The Red Wedding, and started watching after season 6 and fell in love with the world. Wow, started watching after season 6.
Yeah, how interesting. Yeah.
And with this podcast, I listened to the first episode and knew this was a keeper. Bought the books from a local secondhand bookstore and haven't been able to put them down. Reading along with you guys add so much to my reading experience, picking up little details I missed and providing some witty banter, of course, for my train ride to uni. Keep it up, guys. I'm so excited to see what comes next.
I like about that review. I mean, I like everything about that review. Thank you very much, Dodas. But I do like the fact that it sort of tells the story. They selflessly gave up the chance to watch Game of Thrones with their parents to focus on their exams, and now look at them at university. Yeah, well played.
Absolutely.
Well played. Delayed gratification. You can always watch it later on. You're at university now, heading for great things.
I love it.
With your taste and discretion, you're really heading for great things.
That's right.
Thanks very much. That's a really nice review.
I love it. Thank you so much.
All right, let's conclude this one. So, although this is a Jaime chapter, it's sort of like my thoughts turn to Cersei. It feels like, she's, we've said before, she is not dumb, but she thinks she's extremely smart, and she's not really that smart. And she focuses too much on playing the Game of Thrones, and she has no interest in ruling.
Yes, you're absolutely right, because ruling is boring and mundane.
Right.
And you have to do the smart, safe thing most of the times. She is always working on the espionage and the plotting and all that kind of thing, which is more exciting and fun.
Game of Thrones is wildfire.
Right. Yes. Crushing your opponents and making people and breaking people and all those things. That's what she seems to be enjoying doing.
And she does seem to be spiraling a little bit. The sort of paranoia seems to be creeping in. She's shedding friends and holding new people dear.
Yes.
And she can't know the provenance of these people. And the ones we know the provenance of aren't her true friends, that's for sure. The ones we don't know the provenance of, we're not sure about either, and she shouldn't be.
Yes, absolutely. Promoting with no consideration to qualifications. Basically, just as long as they're currently useful to her, she will promote them to some absurdly lofty position. And Jaime's thought, I like his thought considering this is a feast for crows. His thought is, the crows will feast on all of us if you continue this way.
Right.
Speaking of Jaime, as this is a Jaime chapter, their relationship is on life support, Jaime and Cersei, that is. They're at odds on everything.
The one thing I'll say, and I think I've said this on several Jaime chapters here, is that he seems like he's just got a really positive worldview at the moment in some ways. And he seems to be reacting to her awfulness with sympathy and understanding, not rage. And I feel like earlier Jaime might have bridled at the things she's saying to him, but here he seems like he's always trying to calm her down and get her to do the right things, not storming off. You know, the tempestuousness has gone out of him a little bit.
Maybe Cersei should have taken the trip from River Run to King's Landing and lost her right hand. You know, maybe that would have matured her as well.
Perhaps, yeah.
Give her new perspective. Who can stop her? Who can guide her? You know, the Lannisters right now have a strong grip on the Iron Throne, but her poor leadership could cause a weakening for someone else to exploit.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, it feels like the path she's on, their grip on that Iron Throne is going to be very, very slippery very, very soon. If I were the Tyrells, I would get out of town. I'd be like, all right, let's just leave her to her own devices. We'll come back in 6 months and take over, you know?
Yes, it does feel like it. She's won. They've won. Quit trying to win. You've already won. Now rule.
Yeah. But if we're wondering how her mental state is, we don't have to wonder for very long, because next chapter is a Cersei chapter. So we'll see how she's doing.
Yeah, we'll get into the mind of the greatest ruler in Westerosi history, according to her.
Exactly. All right, there's 4 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review, as Dobadodas did. There's no better way to spread the word. It's your last chance to buy merchandise at ghostsofharrenhal.threadless.com. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal, where you can join us at any of the various sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interest. The upper tiers get you the spoiler section. And you could just make a donation directly to our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
Looking for more ways to interact with us, keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments? Well, you could check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.